Alright, if other people kind of roll in, that's fine, we can just go with it. And I want it to be informal, so ask questions as we go. My name is Heidi Johnston. I'm a physical therapist at the medical center over here. About 10 years now, I've been a physical therapist. And we've done various and many back kind of trainings. We kind of have a back school, we call it. People think it says back to school. We're not sending you back to school, but it is kind of learning about the back and how to take care of your back. So I'm not super familiar with the exact things that you guys are doing, so feel free to ask questions, throw things out there, make it relevant for you guys. And I kept it kind of general, just the basic principles of how to protect your back. Mostly with lifting is what we'll talk about the most. So again, kind of keep it informal, throw questions out as we go, okay? So, objectives today, the basics. I don't want to bore you guys with a lot of different things. I think the main things that I would like to focus on for you guys are the anatomy of the back. I'm a visual learner, so if you can kind of see the structure of your back and what doing different things at work does to your back, it kind of, I think, helps you think about it a little bit more. The biggest portion of what I would like to get out of it is
What the?
The basic rules of lifting, and I have cards for you guys. So if you could take one basic message, it would be the rules of lifting and how to protect your back when you are lifting. So that'll be a big emphasis. And then exercises, and that's something that comes up a lot. People that have back problems, what do I do for my back? What can I do through the day? What can I do at home? So I threw some of that in at the end, so we'll be talking about those. Just a little tidbit, back pain is the second most common neurological ailment in the United States, and I could throw a million statistics about work injuries, especially in the environment that you guys are in all day, and I'm sure you guys are aware, and it's overwhelming. It's the most common cause of job-related disability, and the most common cause of missed work. But all that aside, again, we can talk about that all day. The biggest thing is a lot of it's preventable, and I hear a lot of people say, well, I inherited my bad back from my mom or my dad, or I got this. And some of that is absolutely true, but a lot of it's preventable, and a lot of it's what we do to our backs every single day. So that's kind of an important message. So the basic anatomy of the back, and this isn't, like I said, we're not sending you back to school, but I tell people to know the basic curvatures of your spine, and it's pretty simple. So it's your cervical spine, or your neck, you should have a mild inward curve. In your thoracic spine, you should have a mild outward curve. And in your lumbar spine, or your low back, you should have a little bit of an inward curve, okay? So we'll talk more about that, but think about, and the biggest problem is forward bending at the low back. What does that do to your low back? So you lose that curve, okay? So anytime you lift, and that goes for all the curves, but we focus the most on the low back. Anytime you lose those curves, you've put yourself at risk for injury, okay? By putting your spine in a position that is not healthy for it. So think about that. And a lot of the things that we carry over to the rules of lifting are, if you've got those normal natural curves of your spine, then you're in good shape. If you've lost them, then you're going to injure yourself, and it might not be today, but over time it's going to catch up with you. So maintaining those normal curves of your spine is important. Go ahead, Misty. Also, along the same lines, your spine made of each vertebrae stacked on top of one another, right? Can you guys picture that? In between are the discs, okay? And then those major segments of the spine that we talked about with those normal curves. Go ahead and go to the next one. So the important part with that is, in between each of those building blocks of your spine are your discs. And I always call those jelly donuts, okay? So you have jelly donuts in between every level of your spine. Think of those jelly donuts as an inner jelly portion and an outer super tough fibrous ring, okay? So, and that's a healthy disc. So lots of things can go wrong with those discs, but for now, we'll think of those jelly donuts. We'll talk more about what happens to those when you do different things, okay? So jelly donuts in between each bone of your spine. Go ahead there. Alright, so here you can see each level. I don't want to talk about them all day. I'm not big on giving names to them. My patients that come and see me, they want to tell me the 50 different things that are wrong at each level of their back and the different diagnoses that they've had. Almost every x-ray shows degeneration, mild arthritis. So again, I don't want to focus on those things. A lot of things, the important thing is a lot of things can break down based on what we do to our backs, okay? There are other things that we can, we can inherit. There are a lot of other things that can happen, but a lot of these breakdowns can happen because of what we do to our back on a regular basis. The biggest one that we'll focus on now is a disc. So take this disc, okay? It's a jelly donut. That jelly donut, jelly in the middle, outer fibrous ring on the outside. If that outer fibrous ring just kind of loses shape and that inner jelly starts to kind of poke out, that's a bulge. Okay? When that outer fibrous ring actually breaks and that jelly comes out, that's a herniation. Okay? So those are important, not to focus on the terms. And there's not a huge discrepancy in the difference between the two. But what we do to our backs will often lead to one of those two things. You see there kind of just arthritis, bony buildup. The other thing, the next slide will show it better. Go ahead and go to that. So here's kind of a look at that bone. Okay? Go back once, actually, I think it'll be easier to see. So take that jelly donut. So here you can see the outer fibrous ring hasn't actually broken. Here it has. That jelly starts to protrude or herniate out. Go to the next one. Your spinal cord, which is right here, goes all the down the length of your spine. You guys picture that? Down the length of your spine. And at each level, a nerve root comes out. And they're numbered according to each level of your spine. If that jelly, okay, which is kind of sitting here, starts to poke out, it can irritate one of those nerves or the spinal cord for that matter. And so that's what we refer to as a pinched nerve. Those nerves come out and split and supply all the sensation and the motor function to your legs. And that's why an issue with that disc, along with other things, can irritate that nerve and send that pain down the leg. And again, remember, based on oftentimes what we do. Does that make sense? A lot of times people, they have that leg pain, and that's why I just point that out. That leg pain, the source of the problem is truly often the low back. And the same thing happens in the neck. And I am focusing a lot on the low back. If you have questions about how that affects the neck, it's very similar to the neck and the arms, okay? Something at the neck is not going to likely affect the legs, so that can be a little bit confusing too. So just a couple kinds of things that can go wrong there. Go ahead and go to the next one. I like this slide, and I get people to really picture this. So here you can see, here's your vertebrae, jelly donut, vertebrae, right? Think about, this is the back of you, okay? This is the front. So when you forward bend, okay, picture what that does to that jelly and that donut. Forward bend, you lose that inward curve of your spine, right? Same thing at the neck. Same thing at the neck if you're straining. What happens to that jelly donut? The jelly goes out, and most of the times, which way does it go? Out the back. Okay? Who overbends or overworks backwards? It just doesn't happen, right? You guys are all forward. So that's a very important one to think about. Forward bending over time leads to pushing that jelly out of that donut or the disc out the back. Okay? Huge one to remember. Go ahead and go to the next one. Just another one of this, again, isn't to be overwhelming, but when you talk about sprains or strains, pulled muscles, all the time, very common up the back. The only reason I put this up here is to remember, and we talk a lot about lifting with your big muscles. People think your back are big muscles, and they're not at all. And here you can see the hundreds of muscles. They're actually layers of small muscle groups in your back. They're not great big muscles. They're small layers of muscles that have different functions. And so you can see, obviously, how easy it is to kind of strain or pull those muscles in the back. Again, all the more important to make sure you're strong enough to do your job and to make sure you're doing it properly so you're not putting yourself at risk. Okay? Go ahead there. I like this slide, and this is literally from years and years and years ago. they did research on the amount of pressure at one level, okay, or one disc in your back, and it was that lowest segment. So the amount of pressure on one level of your low back with all these different activities. And I don't love, this is in kilograms, you guys might even be better at that than me, but I don't love the kilograms, but it's more than twice kilograms when you look at it in pounds. So the solution to most people is, well, then I just have to lay on my back all day, not injure my back. Well, I guess maybe that's not what I'm saying. That's not obviously a solution. But look at the different positions that you might find yourself in. This is one that stands out. Forward bent with weight. More than, twice. So well over 400 pounds of force on that one disc in your back when you're forward bent with weight. And I'm not even talking about how much weight. Sitting, you wouldn't think, but sitting with weight, even worse. Forward bending alone without weight. Hundreds of pounds of pressure on the back. Those discs just are not going to hold up when you're doing that repeatedly. So that's a good one that kind of sticks in my mind when you talk about lifting and forward bending. Again, inward curve, you can picture that guy's inward curve of his spine, right? He's lost it, and that's where that force comes in. So before we go through those, what are you guys doing? And that's what I'm not great at. What are you guys doing on a regular basis that you feel puts yourself at risk for back injury?
Bending.
Waking up, coming in here.
That's stress in itself, but it's not just on your back. How about putting your back at risk for injury? Bending, lifting, pretty much everything on here, right? Repetitive lifting. Who lifts all day, every day?
Those of them don't get out of fork truck.
Yo, straight
This
up.
is where the debate will come in. So we better not get debated too
It ain't no
much.
debate.
Twisting, reaching overhead, carrying. I mean, these are things. Awkward postures are one that we talk a lot about. You're gonna find yourself, and a lot of the things that I talk about are ideal situations. And a lot of my heavy lifters and my, industrial workers laugh at me because they're like, you do my job and tell me not to get in awkward positions. And I know that when we talk about how you should lift, it's ideal. Does that happen every single time? No, but ideally, if you have the awareness of protecting your back, you're going to be in 50% better shape just by thinking about what you're doing. Prolonged amounts of time, sitting, standing, or being in one position, that's a tough one for some of you guys. Obviously, if you fall or you slip, you're at risk. Physical fitness is one. People will say, well, my legs don't hold up. Well, then we say you need an exercise program. Get your legs stronger in order to help you lift so you're not relying on your back as much, because people think, well, my back's strong, I'm going to use that before I use my legs, and that's just not the case. You think that your back's going to hold up, but it definitely won't. So you need to be strong enough to do your job. Flexibility is one. Who does a regular exercise program before you come in here and lift all day, every day? It's important. And then fatigue. By the end of the day, and they've done a ton of research on, by the end of the day, what are the risks of injury versus in the morning? Because you're tired. There's just that much stress on the back. Go ahead, let me see. So all kinds of risks. So let's go through these one at a time, and we'll see how much time we have at the end. But if there's one take home, if you could, and you say, this is my job, and I have, well, let's say, who has back problems in here? Lots of you, right? Okay, whether it be neck, mid-back, or low back. Let's think what you do. If you could say, and I tell people, look at your job task that you do or that you do all day, every day. And if you say, I want to protect my back during this task, if you could apply these 9 or 10 rules to what you're doing, you're going to be in a lot better shape. Will you be 100%? Maybe not. Things are still going to come up. But if you can apply these basic things to what you're doing, it's definitely going to help you. And they're not earth-shattering. They're really not. But I get my patients to come in, and they say, I lift properly. I've been with my knees and not my back. And I say, well, pick something up off the floor. And they show me, and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So in our minds, a lot of times, we know how to lift. But when we actually get down to it, we're not doing it properly. And we all know when you have a job to do, you can't take extra time to sit down and think about it. If you make a routine, it's not going to slow you down, and that's something that sometimes you guys have a hard time with too. So first one, test the load. Obviously, you guys probably know if you're lifting something a lot all day, every day, you know how much it weighs. But if it's a box of something that you don't know what's in it, make sure you know what you're lifting first. Seems simple, but really important. The next one, and probably one of the biggest ones, the most important ones that I can stress from a safety standpoint, is maintain your neutral spine, which is just the normal curves of your spine. So again, a little bit of inward curve at your neck, outward at your mid-back, inward at your low back, okay? So think about your neck. As soon as you bend forward, I've lost it. I can do that once, twice, I can maybe do it for 5 years, but it's eventually going to catch up with you if you're in that forward head position. Mid-backs hold up fairly well. For the most part, there aren't a lot of disc injuries in the mid-back. They're a lot more stable and a lot stronger. The worst one is the low back. As soon as you forward bend and lose that inward curve of your low back, the pressure on your spine and those discs increases multiple times. So maintain neutral curves of your spine. Wide base of support is simple and easy. Keep your feet far apart, at least shoulder width apart, so you're making sure you're stabilizing yourself. Keep objects close to you, and I'll show you guys another slide, but that's an important one. They've done a lot of research on the farther the weight is away from you, the more stress on your low back that you're getting. Not always easy, right? You're in an awkward position, you're reaching, and the weight's away from you. It's hard to protect your back, but if you have an option to somehow scoot it closer to you, you have to keep that weight as close to you as you can get it. Don't twist. That's a big one. People that are on lines, people that are working at belts, and you guys can throw other things out there that you have trouble with. But if I have to go from here to here consistently, and people are worried about numbers, right? And they're worried about getting a certain amount of things done. As soon as I twist from here to here, you're increasing your risk instantly. You have to find yourself pivoting your feet. It kind of seems like an old person thing to do, but constantly turning if you have weight in your hands, but you should not find any weight with a twist. Again, you can hold up lots of times, but you start to get tired, your muscles start to fatigue, you're going to increase your risk of injury if you're twisting with any weight to it at all. And it doesn't have to be 100 pounds. It can be lightweight. So no twisting at all. Abdominal drawing in just means pull your belly button straight into your spine. We work a lot in physical therapy on what we call core stabilization or lumbar stabilization, getting your core strong. So think about all the muscles through your trunk, okay? If those muscles are strong and you support it by abdominal drawing in, your back is stable and it's not going anywhere. Kind of when it gets loosey-goosey, so to speak, is when it goes south, and that's when you're tired by the day's end and you're not holding up anymore. So keep that belly button drawn in. And we talked about it a little bit. Use your large muscles. What do you guys think your large muscles for lifting are? Your legs. So your quads, huge muscles. So your quads, he says your mouth. If it lifted for you, some of us would be really good lifters. Your butt muscles, your glutes, huge muscle groups, okay? Biggest muscle group in your body, and your hamstring. So when you're lifting, and you guys know it, you have to get in that squat position and not lose that inward curve of your spine. Use those big muscles more so than your back. Your back is just not strong. And you can work on it, but your back muscles are never going to be as strong as those leg, glute, even your abdominal muscles are another one. So let those do the work. And make sure you're strong enough to do that too with your daily tasks. Push rather than pull. Do you guys think about that? If you have an option, it's less stress on your back. So if you have an option, push rather than pull an object. It's sometimes interesting to me because sometimes people feel like it's the opposite. So think about that as you get out there and do a little bit more. Do those make sense to you guys? Mm-hmm. How do you guys feel like you use those on a daily basis? You do? And do you hold up a little bit better when you think about those? For the most part, it's hard. I find myself all the time, and it doesn't always have to be lifting, sitting. And we talk, I think I have a slide in there about posture, but sitting for long periods of time with loss of that inward curve of your spine, it's going to catch up with you. It really will. So I laminated some rules of lifting for you guys. Seems cheesy, but I tell people all the time, take those wherever you're lifting and you feel like this is destroying my back or my neck. Hang those up. Yeah, as just a reminder of, he needs extra reminder. Keep those as a reminder of protecting your back as you're going through your activities. We do it at work a lot, and we do it mostly with posture and sitting when you're at a computer. We work a lot on that. And I say, if you find yourself here typing, which we all do from time to time, if you find yourself here lifting, put that picture there or hold each other accountable and start talking about it a little bit more to protect yourself. Okay? Go ahead, Tracy. This is just a general guideline. They say 10 inches in front of your toes is that safe lifting zone. If you reach outside of that 10 inches, you increase that stress, and I have another slide there, on your back. This, not to overwhelm you with the numbers, but if you look at this, the amount of force on your low back. So look at that L5, that's one disc, okay? Take a 30-pound object. He's lost the inward curve of his low back, right? So he's bending in his back and not his knees. Take 30 pounds and multiply it by the distance that it is away from him. So he's well outside of that 10 inches, right? But here's the other kicker. Take your trunk. So this is just the amount of weight that your trunk weighs, okay? Multiply that by the distance, which is 12 inches, because he's not upright, okay? And that's the force on your back. So it helps, I think, for me sometimes to see the numbers. That's a lot of stress on your back, and that's one time. How many times are you guys doing this a day? We probably don't want to know. Way too many. So, again, all those things combined, protect it and it will help you. The next one, I think, shows a little bit more proper form, okay? Now, kneeling is not always an option, but a squat is definitely a better option. And can you guys see if I'm here, okay? I have that inward curve of my back, right? So I'm still maintaining that inward curve. The hip kind of hinge here is where you lose it. So here, he's kept that inward curve of his spine. Again, whether you're squatting if you can get low enough, or kneeling is a good option if you have to go that low. Look at the difference. You're talking about 500 pounds force versus over 2,000, just by keeping that a little bit closer to you and keeping that inward curve of your spine. So it really does make a difference. And again, there are things that play a role in that. It's easier said than done, you know, to do all those things, but just the awareness makes a huge difference.
So go ahead, the jelly donut thing that you're talking
Yes.
about, does that eventually, if you wear and tear it so much, just disappear? I'm seeing, my husband just had surgery 4 weeks ago. He had a completely collapsed.
Yeah.
He had spinal stenosis, and when they opened him up, he was completely, and they said eventually he would be paralyzed if he didn't have that fixed.
Yeah, so that jelly donut, which creeps out, can get better, so that's a good thing to remember too, because your body can reabsorb that jelly, but that jelly's gone. And so when you look at MRIs or you look at x-rays, a nice plump jelly donut, and it seems silly I always call it that, but that nice plump disc that'll show up mostly white on an MRI will lose its height, thus why people get shorter. It'll lose its water content, and it gets smaller, and those bones get closer and closer together, so those bones stacked on top of one another don't have those nice plump discs in between. So yeah, I mean, really that's that jelly gone. The disc itself loses its shape and its cushion, which can create a lot of other problems, some of those that we talked about. That's really what you're dealing with, is that jelly's not there to support that back anymore. Does that make sense? In the neck or the low back. So quickly, what do? What do you guys do to prevent low back, neck pain? How do you guys protect? What are some things that you do here to protect your back?
I do a lot of, in the tractor, I'll do a lot of, like, I'll move my whole body this way when I'm backing up, because
Yep.
I back up paint carts and things of that nature, because there's a lot of strain when I'm like this, trying to do it, so
Yep.
I'll twist the whole body.
So those major keys that we talked about, the rules of lifting, the last piece that I'll touch on after we go through these are stretching. And I think that's a take-home message for you guys that you should be doing. And I'm not talking, I'll get myself into trouble because you guys will go back and tell your bosses that I said take breaks every hour. I'm talking like a minute. If you are forward bending and you're lifting, how long do you do this before you ever take a break? If you take a minute, if you take 30 seconds, and we'll talk about some of the exercises, and just go the opposite direction that you've been going, it completely changes the stress on your spine. And so that's a huge one for you guys. Change the position.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. change the position that you're in regularly to decrease the stress on your back. That's probably one of the biggest things. Stress management, relaxation, we could talk about that all day too. Overall fitness, are you strong enough? Do you have the proper nutrition to do your job that you're doing all day? Not a lot of people do. Movement retraining are the things that we talk about, lifting properly. The accumulation concept just means you can't lift all day, every day, and hold up. You've got to take breaks. You've got to change the stress on your back. Fatigue control, take those breaks that I just talked about. Posture is a big one. Strength, we talked about, have the strength to support what you're doing. And then stretching, which is something that I'm going to show you guys a little bit about. So all those things will help you. Posture, everybody kind of knows, and I hit on that enough, whether you're sitting or you're standing, normal curves of your spine. If you keep those curves of your spine, you're going to be in much better shape. Okay? Go ahead, Dennis. So exercises. And we don't have to talk too much about these, but when I talk about, and it's hard to say this is an exercise program for everybody because I see individuals and they all need to work on different things. But if I could throw just a couple simple exercises at you guys, for strength, so people come in and they'll say, well, I can't lift with my knees because my knees bother me then. Well, and that's true. It's absolutely true. But what do you do then? Well, you have to build your strength so you're not wearing and tearing on your knees as much. And again, your knees are stronger joints in your back. They're just going to hold up better. So a simple wall squat. And I tell people, do 30 wall squats a day to build your strength. It seems silly, but it's going to help you because that's the exact position that you should be in if you're a lifter and you're lifting all day, every day. So a simple wall squat. Tummy tight, engage your core, and you're using the exact muscles that you want to strengthen in order for lifting. So that's a good exercise. So that's just a general strengthening exercise, okay? Stretches, I put a number of these on here. This is a go-to from your low back standpoint. If you guys are standing, okay, and you're lifting and you're forward bending most of the day, or you're riding and you're sitting and you're losing that inward curve of your low back a little bit, this is a key. If every hour you did 10 of these, your back would be in a lot better shape. So I see people, they come in and they have disc issues, a little bit of everything. But they bend forward, and I'm always shocked because you guys can probably bend forward, touch the ground. I'm always blown away because you're doing that all day. But as soon as I say put your hands on the small of your back and bend backwards, they're like, neutral. They're not going much past that at all. And that's not, a piece of that is the way you were made, absolutely. But a piece of that is something that you can absolutely work on, and that helps those discs. It helps restore normal health to those discs. So this is a good one. If you could do this every hour, and we're talking for the most part a healthy back. I'm not saying people with problems, this is for everybody. But a healthy back, even not so healthy, should probably be doing this throughout the day in order to keep the pressures on your discs down a little bit. Just some general flexibility, and this is one, if you guys want pictures of exercises or exercise programs, let me know. I can make those handouts for you. Trunk rotations, and these are hard at work, so I tell people you have to find practical exercises. You can't necessarily lay down out on the floor at work probably, but you can stand. People will start talking or you'll be in big trouble. Standing backward bends, but when you go home at night, if you've lifted all day, every day, you should work on some of these flexibility exercises to decrease that accumulation effect, because again, you do it 2 days, but you do it years and years and years, it catches up with you. So good, just flexibility exercises. Hamstring stretch. Sorry, Misty. Hamstring stretch. I don't have very many hard workers that are at it all day, every day. They have good hamstring flexibility. That's a big one. So down here, keep your hamstring stretched out a little bit. Your pelvis attaches to your low back, creates a lot of problems and stress on that low back when your hamstrings are tight. The next one is more, I give this more to my office people, but it might be relevant for you guys, and this is more neck related. Arm stretches, neck stretches. If you're carrying a bunch of tension, when you talk about necks, you're mostly talking up through here. Shoulder rolls, somehow decrease the stress on your neck by stretching those muscles a little bit more. These are more carpal tunnel stretches if you're doing a lot of repeated wrist things. Go ahead there, let's see. This is just, none of you guys are just sitting, right? You're
All over the place.
all over the place. Don't get each other in trouble.
We have the perfect stretch plan. I used to work for Curves Fitness Center, and we would stretch before the exercise. It was like I always recommend it to the women to do it in the morning and,
Yeah.
and at night. And
Get
it
yourself warmed
prevents so much.
Yep, it helps a lot.
We
to
should
get
do
all
it
the
here.
stress off.
Chinese do.
We should do that.
Come
Right
in.
after our morning stand-up.
Stretch every morning before you get going. It's a great idea. You see, the women are on board and the men are like, heck no, I'm not doing that. But it really is a good
Just the
idea.
women or the men too?
The people that would hurt themselves.
So that's
would
why
be good for that.
it's really pertinent you guys go ahead and listen. So that's about it. I always laugh about this because this is probably what you guys really look like through the day. You're sitting like that. I find myself here all the time. We laugh at ourselves at work a lot or lifting like this, trying to practice what we preach. Questions, guys? That helpful at all? A little bit?
So you doing this now instead of therapy?
Nope.
Oh,
This is just a time out for me
you
today.
did therapy with my foot.
You get a massage in?
I recognize you. I can remember what we saw you for. You're the guy. You're the guy who comes in and I don't want to do any exercises and I don't want to do this, but I want a massage. We do that coupled with other things a lot of times.
Did that
What
other
kind of
time
massage? It's not that kind of massage. Exactly.
My bike's already been fixed.
Well, there you go. How do you keep it?
I gotta stay in a steel plate, a couple screws in it.
Things can still go wrong with it.
Huh?
Things can still go wrong with it.
but I put
You
25
take
years
care of
ago.
it, really, and it's held up nice, nice. Yeah,
She did therapy
good stuff.
3 weeks.
Yeah, I learned all that the hard way.
So if you could turn it back,
Stretching and all that,
do you think you could have prevented it?
maybe.
Some say yes, some say
You
no.
don't do
And
much
again,
now.
things go wrong that you can't control, but a lot of times.
Don't jeopardize